Hello and welcome to the People Power Lunch Hour Show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. And on today's show, we will be talking about food insecurity here in Philadelphia, continuing our theme through the month. Today, we'll speak with Joel Berg. He's the CEO of Hunger Free America. And later on in the show, we'll be speaking with Stefanie Arck-Baynes, the communications director from Philabundance. And a few months ago, they held a joint press conference here in Philadelphia to talk about a new report that was released that said 18.3% of Philadelphia residents live in households that are food insecure. The total number of food insecure individuals in Philadelphia is 680,000. We're going to talk about lacking access to healthy foods here in Philadelphia and talk more broadly about the problem of hunger in the United States. And we'll talk about how people can plug in locally if they'd like to organize, volunteer, or support those efforts. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. Again, I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about hunger here in Philadelphia. My first guest is the CEO of Hunger Free America, an organization that works to improve access to foods here in the United States. They do a lot of research, advocacy, and informing of, this problem of access to healthy foods. And with me, I have Joel, who is the CEO, Joel Berg. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, great. Well, tell us a little bit more about Hunger Free America and the work that you do. You're a national organization based in New York City, I believe, and you formerly worked for the Department of Agriculture. So you've sort of built a career around addressing hunger in the United States.
Yes, I've been doing this a while now, and unfortunately, the problem hasn't been solved because our politics are so broken. We almost ended hunger in the 1970s in America because we had more inclusive policies on the economy and a more adequate safety net. So this is why I have to do this life work until we can finally build the movement necessary to solve it. And that's what Hunger Free America is all about, building the grassroots citizens movement to enact the policies and programs needed to end hunger in America by creating jobs, ensuring living wages, and ensuring an adequate safety net. And we work both on the direct service side, helping people access nutrition assistance programs, ensuring that there are programs to provide school breakfast and summer meals for kids, recruiting skills-based and high-impact volunteers to be even more effective in the fight against hunger, but also working on the policy side, fighting back against the cuts in these programs, calling for expansions in anti-hunger programs, and calling for job creation programs and efforts like living wage increases, minimum wage increases, so people can actually earn enough to feed their families by work.
Yes, and I love the idea that Hunger Free America is not just trying to address the problem through policy and advocacy, but you're also working to build a people's movement. Tell us more about that, about how we can build an intersectional movement that not only addresses hunger, but also intersects with other issues such as poverty and having a living wage.
Great question. A lot of people falsely assume that this is about a food problem. The reason we have hunger isn't that we've ever lacked enough food. Even in the Great Depression, despite the Dust Bowl, we were still overproducing food in the Great Depression. The problem has always been that not all the money they need to buy the food they need. So at the bottom of this really is the poverty crisis in America, and it's no coincidence that about 39 million Americans are food insecure and about 39 million Americans are poor. Not everyone who is low income or poor has difficulty getting enough food, and not everyone who is hungry is below the very meager federal poverty line, but there's definitely a huge overlap. And if we ended poverty in America, we'd essentially end hunger in America. And so when we look at what's worked, the Poor People's Movement in the 1960s, launched by Dr. King and continued after his death, pushed for the creation of the Modern Nutrition Assistance Safety Net. And they pressured then President Nixon and presidents that followed to create the food stamps program, to expand school lunch, to include school breakfast, to create the Women's, Infants, and Children program for pregnant women and infants. And those programs dramatically reduced hunger in America. And the only reason we have so much hunger is we've gone backwards since then. Starting in the Reagan era, we were sold on this essentially lie that underfunded private charities could kick up where a failing economy had left off. And so every social movement that's ever been successful in U.S. history has done three things: mobilized and empowered the people most affected, and sometimes we act as if this is a small little issue. We're talking about 49 million Americans. That's a population bigger than the population of Texas and New England combined. That's number one. We need to mobilize the people most affected, convince the people in the middle, convince the people who aren't currently hungry that it's in their economic and spiritual self-interest to solve this problem, and frankly, isolate, discredit, and defeat in a peaceful, democratic manner, but isolate, discredit, and defeat the people out there who are pushing for policies that would actually increase hunger, keeping wages down, busting unions that build the middle class, and trying to cut food programs, even though they're throwing away corporate welfare like there's no tomorrow. And we do those three things, we can easily end hunger in America within a few years.
Yeah, I mean, it seems absurd that in one of the richest countries on the planet, and with so much food being produced and so much food being wasted every day, that we have a problem of hunger, and that we often send aid to other countries to address famine and lack of access to water. But yet here, especially in Philadelphia, we still have a huge problem with that. I want to ask, what did you observe while working for the Department of Agriculture in terms of the problems or things that can be improved with the SNAP program, formerly known as the food stamp program? Because I think many people look to the government first to address that issue and seem to think that it's taken care of. What are some recommendations for improving the program that you might have?
Well, I would say, unfortunately, a lot of people I don't think look to the program. I think, conversely, they think that private charities are solving the problem, when, depending on your way of counting, private charities provide maybe 1/10 or 1/20th the amount of food the federal nutrition safety net provides. So SNAP, the relatively new name over the last decade for the food stamps program, feeds tens of millions of people a month. But number one, the benefits are too small. The average benefit in the SNAP program is now $1.37 per meal. Yes, you heard that right, $1.37 per meal. And there are lots of stereotypes of who's getting SNAP, but the largest number of people getting SNAP are white. The vast majority of people getting SNAP are either working adults, children, senior citizens, people with disabilities, or veterans. And so they don't get enough in benefits, and then there are too many people excluded through the program. I personally think anyone who's a resident of this country and working for the society should get help, but many people are prohibited from getting the help due to their immigration status. Some people make just a few dollars above the cutoff line. So if I had a magic wand and could convince the conservatives in Congress to go ahead with this and help them understand that if you want our economy to be strong, if you want us to be tough in international military affairs, we need a well-nourished nation. If I had a magic wand to fix the SNAP program, I would increase the benefit size so it can really allow people to afford not only full meals, but nutritious meals, which are more expensive. And two, I would make sure that anyone who is at risk of getting hungry could have these benefits. If we do those two things and increase the food purchasing power of low-income people by raising wages, we could end hunger quickly. What I learned in my time, and to directly answer your question, my 8 years in the federal government, is the federal nutrition assistance programs save people from dying. Let me repeat that. The federal nutrition assistance programs save people from dying. as bad as hunger is in Philadelphia, and we'll get into that, it jumped by 22% over the previous 6 years. 680,000 people in the city alone struggling against hunger. As bad as that hunger is, it's mostly people rationing food, choosing between food and medicine, choosing between food and healthcare, not people starving in the streets the way you might see in Somalia or North Korea. And the reason we have food insecurity but not massive starvation is that we do have these federal programs. So they're certainly better than nothing. They've prevented us from having mass famine, but they need to be expanded and modernized to finish the job. So in addition to realizing that these programs save lives, there is too much bureaucracy. The federal government, by law, manages the states running these programs, and in some places manages the counties. In Pennsylvania, actually, it's run on a statewide basis, but in neighboring New Jersey, it's run on a county by county basis. But the irony is much of the bureaucracy is actually pushed on the programs by conservatives. With everything else, with rich people's programs or tax rebates for billionaires, the government trusts you, and you only have to provide documents if you're audited. For the SNAP program, the government doesn't trust you at all. You are forced to bring in massive amounts of paperwork to prove everything under the sun. My name's Joel Berg, and if there are 2 other Joel Bergs in the database, one of whom owns child support, I have to go prove that a negative, that I'm not the Joel Berg who owes child support. So my long-winded answer is, to boil it down, what I learned at the U.S. government is these programs save lives, but they also have too much bureaucracy put on them by conservatives that need to be removed.
Yeah, and I'll also add that, there are several states that try to enact drug testing for people that are collecting benefits. And in all those cases, they wound up wasting more money than making any savings from, catching people who were unable to collect.
And the federal courts have ruled that's unconstitutional anyway. And it was unconstitutional for cash assistance to drug test people. And Trump administration is trying to do it for the SNAP program. It's definitely illegal in that program because federal law doesn't allow it. But as you say, it costs far more than it saves. When they did this in Florida, they found out that SNAP recipients had lower rates of testing positive for drugs than the population as a whole. And there was a former congressman from Florida who was all gung-ho on drug testing SNAP recipients, and he had to resign from Congress after being caught with cocaine. So the hypocrisy of people on the right who are just so infuriated, so aghast that people who are working hard get a little help from the government of $1.37 per meal to get SNAP help, but have no problem with the Trump administration just giving out $7.7 billion, that's billion with a B, $7.7 billion to farm operations that were hurt by Trump's ridiculous trade policies. And there are no work requirements for someone who owns land and gets subsidies for work that other people do on that land. So there are a whole lot of double standards here. And if we build a political movement and a real people's movement to say, let's put people truly first, then we can get beyond that hypocrisy and end this problem.
Yes. And let's talk locally here in Philadelphia. Nearly 1 in 5 residents live in households that are food insecure. The number is over 680,000 here in Philadelphia. And Department of Agriculture defines food insecurity as a state in which consistent access to adequate food is limited by lack of money and other resources. That number increased by 22% in the last 6 years and nearly 50% in the last 10 years. And over 50% of those food insecure adults are actually employed. So the myth that they're not working is not actually true. Statewide food insecurity increased by 7%. And the cost of ending hunger in Philadelphia is approximated at $160 million. What do we do about this problem here in Philadelphia?
Well, one thing is the state of Pennsylvania can raise the minimum wage. I point out that there was less hunger over the last few years in Delaware, less hunger in New Jersey, and those states had higher minimum wages. Now, not to get too wonkish for your listeners and viewers, so correlation is not always causation, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that when people earn more money, they have more money for food, and they're less likely to be hungry. So let's say you happen to be listening to this and you're conservative and you think I'm a darn socialist for claiming we should have a bigger, more robust, government food assistance program. Okay, fine. Then support a higher minimum wage nationwide that says everyone working full time can afford to feed their family. That wouldn't cost the country a penny. So that's one thing. A second thing Hunger Free America specifically and innovatively proposed is we have a whole detailed proposal about how to make it easier for low-income people to apply online for federal nutrition assistance programs and for other poverty programs, and to do it via a smartphone and be able to manage their benefits that way. Right now, low-income people have to spend a boatload of time going to one office to get SNAP, another office to get WIC, another office to get Section 8 housing benefits. They have to file independently with the IRS to get their earned income tax credit tax refunds for working poor people. It would be so much easier if we just allowed people to apply all these programs by smart. A lot of low-income people in Philadelphia and the rest of the country are unbanked, meaning they don't have bank accounts, so they have to spend ridiculous amounts of money at check cashing facilities. The greatest sign in the world is being poor is really expensive. You have to spend money on stuff that wealthy people just don't, ridiculous fees. So I call for combining access to these safety net programs with increasing the access of low-income people to low-cost or free banking services. And so we're trying to find pilot places around the country who'll do that. It would be great if the city of Philadelphia did that. It'd be great if the state the Commonwealth of Pennslement did that. I always want to get you commonwealths like Pennsylvania, Massachusetts are particular, about that. And we have bad enough rivalries over of sports between New York and Pennsylvania, so I don't want to get your Commonwealth name wrong.
The great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Yeah, and I think,
And I must say, New York has a boatload of hunger. We have over 1 million people food insecure. But in the last 6 years, because the economy has improved, hunger has gone down in New York City. It's gone down in most cities of the United States. And it really is a shocking, horrible outlier that it's gotten worse in Philadelphia when it's gotten better elsewhere. I know Philadelphia sports fans are fierce about wanting Philadelphia to be number one in the country. And I would just hope that Philadelphians would fight just as hard to be number one in reducing hunger. You cannot be the city of brotherly or sisterly love when so many people there are going hungry. And God knows the last thing you want is a New Yorker lecturing you on what to do. Well, we listen to great Pennsylvanians, the great Benjamin Franklin, or more recently, the former Senator Harris Wofford, who was a great mentor of mine who recently passed. So we take advice from Pennsylvanians when you have a lot of knowledge, and I just urge you to take this advice, get on the stick, Philadelphia, and do something about your hunger problem. And I would be glad, and our organization is glad to work with you and the excellent organizations that already exist in Philadelphia to address this.
Well, listeners and viewers out there, I am a native Philadelphian, and I am telling you we need to do something about this problem. And we are number one at something, and that's being the biggest, poorest city in the country with the highest poverty rate. And so that's really unacceptable. The show is really about addressing those problems and showing people the connections between all of these different movements that are here in Philadelphia. And so here we have a pretty fierce movement for access to affordable housing. We have many people working on access to healthcare. There are people looking to get money out of politics. There are people fighting for $15 minimum wage. All of these issues are connected, and I think organizations like yours and Philabundance are really good at establishing that.
1,000%. because of the role of money in politics, is one of the reasons we give out $7.7 billion to farm operations because of bad trade policies, because they've given hundreds of millions of dollars to federal campaigns. We haven't mentioned the role of racism and sexism and homophobia, but those all play a significant role in increasing poverty and thus hunger in America. The only issue that correlates with hunger almost as much as poverty does is disability status. Americans with disabilities, mental and physical disabilities, are extraordinarily likely to face food insecurity. So unfortunately, all these issues combine, but fortunately, by attacking one, you can help solve the others. You mentioned affordable housing in Philadelphia, and boy, believe me, in New York, if you were to make housing more affordable, you would automatically solve a huge chunk of the hunger problem. So I applaud you. You're 100% right. All these issues are together. Now, that may make it sound to your listeners and viewers, well, this is just more daunting. Well, if we have to fix A, B, and C, then, oh my goodness, we can never do all that. But that's wrong. By building the people's movement, we can address all these at once and force our political system to do this at once. And I hope the House of Representatives passes progressive legislation after progressive legislation, And one of two things happens. Either the best of all worlds, enough moderate Republicans in the Senate, or at least senators who want to try to claim to be they're moderate because they're up for re-election. A good example would be Pennsylvania's Pat Toomey, who would embrace these programs and then they would become law. Or in the worst of worlds, they oppose it. And while many of our organizations are non-political and don't get involved in campaigns, we still have rights as private citizens. And in our free time as private citizens, we can point out to the country and to Pennsylvania, other places, who voted against, who opposed these common sense policies that to bring us all together. So I think our greatest opponent isn't even the right. It is complacency and despondence and the belief that you can change things. And I just point to the marriage equity movement. Whatever your views on the marriage equity movement are, and I happen to be adamantly for marriage equity, and I personally think it's a great moral victory to the country that people can now marry whoever they love. But if I was on your show, 40 years ago, there wouldn't be a show with Skype 40 years ago. Let's say there was. And I said, I support freedom to marry, and we're going to build a movement saying this is going to happen not just in New York and California, Massachusetts, but in Idaho and Mississippi, and South Dakota. You tell me I'm crazy. But they built the movement necessary to do it. The people most affected were in the leadership of that movement. And if we build a true poor people's movement again, we can get the same victories on economic issues that we have on some of the social issues. Even though I also point out, despite the marriage equity victory in a few dozen states, it's still actually legal to discriminate against people in hiring based on their sexual orientation. So we have our work cut out for us on many, many fronts.
Yeah, and fun fact, Joel, Phillycam is the result of a 27-year movement by people in Philadelphia in a coalition to fight for public access. And this radio station is the result of a national movement for an expansion of community radio, which resulted in federal legislation mandating more community radio. So we know firsthand here at Phillycam that people power, which is, obviously the name of this show, goes a really long way. And I think there's a lot of other things that people just need to understand, which is why we're dropping this information as you're advocating, as you're calling your legislators and having conversations around your own dinner kitchen tables. There's a lot that people can do, and don't underestimate the amount of power one individual has to make change. Joel, I want to thank you for the work that you do. And if you could provide some information about your website, how people can follow your work and read this report more in detail, I think our listeners and viewers would appreciate that.
Sure. You can go to hungerfreeamerica.org. That's hungerfreeamerica.org. If you're low income and need food, we can help you find it through there or through the National Hunger Hotline at 1-866-3-HUNGRY. That's 1-866-3-HUNGRY. But if you have resources and can donate to us, the truth is donating money is about a zillion times more effective than bringing cans someplace. So you can do that through hungerfreeamerica.org. And you can also volunteer. We want to hook you up with advocacy efforts. We want to hook you up with skills-based efforts. It's great when people volunteer around Christmas and Thanksgiving, but we can make you even more effective and more fulfilled by making an even bigger difference. So you can get all that at hungerfreeamerica.org. Now, I assume if you're watching this online, you have access online, but if you like that old-fashioned thing called a phone, we still answer our phones at 212-825-0028. And I thank you so much for focusing on all of these vital issues.
Thank you so much. That's Joel Berg. He's the CEO of Hunger Free America, a national advocacy organization working to increase access to food. Thank you so much, Joel, and we'll be right back.
I wish that we could be more sustainable in our own backyards. I grow amazing tomatoes. I grow all these different varieties of tomatoes, and backyard celery is amazing. It tastes so much different than grocery store celery. And you can get a pack of seeds for just a couple $.
Often I see times people don't have enough money to eat. I just want to make sure everybody gets a nice meal and a nutritious meal. That's just my way of making sure everybody's taken care of.
It was sort of a dream. We originally thought maybe we could bring kids out to farms in the country and spend a week or spend a season. And then I realized, why not just bring them right down the street? You know, it's a way to learn about the environment, it's a way to learn about fresh food, it's a way to learn about working in a team and community, just a way to be outside. It's a beautiful place.
So you grow your own food, and it's cheap, and it's better. And I think it's important for us to maintain biodiversity, to stay close to our food chain. Kids love it. Kids come to my garden all the time, and I have to stop them almost from eating the grass because they just want to eat everything that's in the yard.
You know, I just want to zoom in on helping people, feeding people, and just try to put a smile on their face.
You're making sure that people know enough to make wise choices. So, you know, if they grow it and they get to know it, they might love it. And if they love it, they might take care of it. They're not going to take care or care about the environment or care about the food system or care about their bodies if they don't even know that they have options.
Where I live is sort of a melting pot because it's all different ages and all different types of people, different cultures, different race. And it'll be good to see, you know, everybody come together, you know, as one. We all can add a little something to the pot.
Welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour Show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. We are continuing our conversation about access to foods and hunger here in Philadelphia. I'm joined in the studio by Stefanie Arck-Baynes. She's the communications director from Philabundance, a local organization here that works in Philadelphia and in South Jersey, providing access to healthy foods and more to people here in Philly. Each week, they give food to 90,000 people here in our area. Stefanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell our listeners a little bit about Philabundance. Of course, you have a lot of different programs. People know you for taking an active role, especially most recently during the government shutdown. I think Philabundance really stepped up to figure out how to involve the community and giving federal workers access to foods. There's training programs. PhillyCam has worked with PCK Catering, which is a great job training program for people who are interested in the culinary arts. You do so much. Tell us a little bit about some of those programs.
Absolutely. And you did a great job talking high level about what we do. Philabundance feeds 90,000 people each week in the Delaware Valley, which includes Philadelphia and 4 counties in Pennsylvania, 4 other counties in Pennsylvania, and 4 counties in South Jersey. The problem in Philadelphia and the surrounding counties. It's about 700,000 people who go to bed each night. They might be hungry. They might not know where their next meal is coming from or if they're going to have one at all. Philabundance does help feed 90,000 people each week, about a third of whom are children. About 16% of those are seniors, and others include the working class. They include college students, veterans, mostly people who have jobs or have somebody in the household working, but they're not able to make ends meet. Especially this time of year when it's so cold, a lot of people have a decision: do I heat, do I eat? All year round, people are making decisions about spending trade-offs. Do I pay for medication? Do I pay for food? Can I make this car repair, or am I not going to be able to put food on the table? And so Philabundance and 350 agencies with which we work, we're there to help those people, predominantly people who are facing a temporary setback like a job loss, might be a death in the family. And as you alluded to, the government shutdown, really unfortunate, but a good example of the type of person who we serve. It's someone who's faced an emergency and they need temporary assistance while they get back on their feet.
So if you're just joining us, we've been talking about hunger in America and here in Philadelphia. And the reason why we wanted to do this show is because a report came out through our guest, Joel Berg, earlier on the show, Hunger Free America. And a press release was issued by Philabundance and Hunger Free America detailing the immense problem we have here in Philadelphia with a rise in the number of people lacking access. And that number increased by 22% in the last 6 years. Can you talk about the impact of this report and why you all wanted to raise particular awareness? There was a press conference and there was a lot of press outreach regarding this.
I'll be honest, we weren't surprised by the findings of this at all. Philabundance and other anti-hunger organizations in the area are acutely aware that hunger isn't just an issue in the Philadelphia area, but it's a crisis. Nationally, 1 in 8 people face hunger, and in Philadelphia, that number rises to 1 in 5. So if you're on SEPTA, if you're commuting, you can just look to your left, look to your right. It's likely that one of those people didn't eat breakfast this morning and might not have lunch either. So this was a really good opportunity for us to raise awareness of the issue, because there are a lot of people here who think it's not really an issue that impacts anyone I know. It's because of all the people who you see on the Parkway. It's because of people who don't work. And that's not true. Hunger actually hits every zip code from Chestnut Hill to Cherry Hill. And we're really grateful to Joel and his team for putting this research out there and reaching out to us so that we could get together to tell people in the area this is a problem, but the good news is that there are multiple ways that you can help.
Let's talk about those multiple ways, because we're about solutions here. We're part of Resolve Philly's solutions-based journalism program. What are the different ways we can address that locally? I think Joel highlighted problems with SNAP and, more generally problems with money in politics and tax breaks, et cetera. But what are some things that we should be talking to our mayor about, city council about, our state and, our state representatives?
So there are a few different ways that myself and my colleagues in the communications department at Philabundance say that we help raise awareness of hunger, and that's food, funds, and friends. And so those are the 3 buckets that we really look at when people want to give help. Food, you can run a food drive. You can donate money for food, which is actually more effective because we buy in bulk and we can buy more food than the average person can donate. Funds, self-explanatory, I just discussed. And then friends is really what you're alluding to, and it's how can people advocate for issues and bills that help feed people in need, and how can you help us spread the word? And so 2 things that I would recommend are we have an advocacy page on our website. It has current issues. So what are the issues that are facing people today? Does it have to do with during the shutdown, SNAP and WIC were both affected, and so they were both given extraordinarily early. So people were a little confused to get these different benefits monthly. So we like to try and spread the word about any interruptions or how people can get assistance when those things are interrupted. If there are any bills that are facing, that are getting voted on that would impact the people we serve, We do send out advocacy alerts. People can sign up for those. And we tell people very explicitly, who can you contact? What can you say? And why do these things matter to you? Even if you're not facing hunger or you don't think you know anyone who's facing hunger, certain things like SNAP, they don't just impact the people who receive SNAP, but also the grocers who are really generous to Philabundance and our agencies. They're impacted by SNAP as well, because if there isn't as much SNAP going around, they're not benefiting. And so if they're not making as much money, they might not be able to donate as much to us as they did. So there are a lot of economic impacts and fallouts that people might not be aware of that they could learn about if they visit our advocacy page, sign up for our advocacy alerts, and we'll keep everybody posted.
Yeah, and it's important to inform yourself, especially as we have a very competitive city council race and neighborhood conversations are happening, town halls. I think it's a valid question to ask, right? What are we going to be doing collectively here in the city to address this problem? So check out their advocacy page and educate yourself on these issues first and foremost. How can people volunteer? Because I think a lot of people, even our own radio producers here, were very concerned during the shutdown, and they wanted to run a whole food drive and stuff here. And I thought to myself, well, there's a lot of really great organizations doing this work already that maybe we could plug into that instead. If there are people out there that feel very passionate about this, how can they help Philabundance movement?
It's a great question, and volunteering is a way that we consider making friends and having people come in and see the work that's going on at Philabundance. We do have volunteer shifts at our warehouse in South Philly. We're right down the street from the stadiums. We take about 30 people per shift. We have shifts Monday through Friday. We do have occasional Tuesday night shifts and occasional Saturday shifts. And it's really, if you watch Laverne and Shirley, I guess I'm dating myself, or I Love Lucy, it's very much the warehouse with the conveyor belt. And we have about 15,000 volunteers who come in per year and volunteer. They're saving us about $1 million in salaries. So we're able to put that money back into feeding the community. So we're really grateful when people want to volunteer their time and come in. They can visit our website. There is a very quick and easy way to sign up to volunteer. If people can't come in to volunteer to the warehouse, we also have a need for volunteer drivers. People can commit to as little as 3 hours a week. They can drive in their communities. What we need people to do are pick up excess food from grocery stores and deliver it to agencies. So if you live in South Philly, then perhaps you go to the local store and drop it off at an agency. It'll all be within 5 to 10 miles of your house and really based on your own availability. So if anyone has a car and they're able to do that, we have a dire need for drivers right now.
If there's somebody listening or watching and they say, gosh, I would love some help right now, for whatever reason, what's the first step that they can take? Because I think sometimes, even college students especially, there's a large number of college students here that don't have access. I think it numbers something like 40%. And I don't think that particular population is exposed to social services or case managers or people that are even paying attention to that. If they're listening out there or watching, what can they do through Philabundance to access some help?
So we have a page on our website that's called Find Food, and there are a lot of different resources listed there. We do have about 17 of our own sort of free farmers markets going on around the Delaware Valley, so they could look for those near them. Those occur once a week, though. There's also a list of the 350 agencies with which we work. They have different hours, they have different programs, so they could reach out to those. But probably one of the easiest ways, they can call the Why Hunger hotline, which is 1-800-5-HUNGRY. You give them your zip code, and they will tell you real resources available near you.
Okay, so make sure you check out that website, because there actually is a lot of help from organizations like Philabundance that people can tap into. Obviously, it's not a permanent solution. That's why we need policy change, right, to address these systemic issues. But there's a lot of information on the website that you can read about and get access to some foods, at least temporarily. Are there any other projects or programs that Philabundance offers that you'd like to highlight that people should know about?
Absolutely. So there are two things I want to mention, and one is building off of your great intro talking about PCK, which stands for Philabundance Community Kitchen. It's a 14-week culinary and life skills training program. It happens in a facility in North Philadelphia. It is for low-income adults who need a second chance at life. And so the whole idea behind PCK is instead of giving a man a fish, you teach a man to fish. And so in this case, we are training people, but it's not just knife skills that they're getting. They're getting their Surf Save certification. They're learning about how do I interview with a restaurant? How do I even just get along with other people in a kitchen or anywhere in life? And it's an amazing program. It's free for people to attend. And we will have open houses for the next semester of classes coming up next month. So I would say if people want to check back next week, the beginning of March, we'll have all that information on our website. And now that I'm thinking about it, March is such an exciting month. We do have a new initiative that we're going to be launching next month, and I can't talk about it entirely right now, but the idea of policy change and just giving someone food today isn't solving their problem tomorrow. And Philabundance and our partners are acutely aware of that. It's something that we've been talking about for years. It's how do we shorten the line? Not just how do we get through that line, and we have a couple hundred people attending our free food distributions every week, but how do we make sure that those people have the food and the resources that they need so that they're not back again the next week? And that's something that we're going to be working on, expanding our mission and undertaking some work that really looks at what can we give people beside food or in addition to food that will help them become stable.
Yeah, I imagine that people who lack access to food might also be experiencing stress and anxiety and other health issues related to that. I mean, if you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, you're obviously going to be very concerned, and it's probably going to affect other aspects of it. I'm not a doctor. This is unofficial research, but I have a hunch that people also need access to other services. I want to give a shout out to Hugo, who works with the PCK program, and all of the great servers that he worked with. They did our Cameo Awards, and they were awesome. We just got to give them a shout out because they were so great, so friendly, so professional. And I really found that it was really cool to see people of different ages, different backgrounds, all being able to participate in that program. And I also know that they do a lot of job referrals and like help people get placed into more permanent employment afterwards, which is also really great.
Well, and what's really great about Philabundance Community Kitchen launched a catering initiative last year. And so you mentioned PC Catering. So all proceeds of PC Catering go back into the Philabundance Community Kitchen program. So you're not just getting great food at a great price, but you're also supporting low-income adults who need a second chance at life. So it's a great way to eat well and feel good at the same time.
And this is not an endorsement, but the food was really good. Okay, so before we wrap up, again, I want to thank you for coming here to share some of this knowledge and for all the work that you do. Can you tell people again how to plug in with Philabundance, the website, the social media, and if they have more specific policy questions that they would like more information about?
Absolutely. So people can visit us on the web at philabundance.org, and then all of our social media handles are at Philabundance. We have an active community on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that people have. Visit our website. There are different ways that people can get involved with advocacy, with volunteering, running a food drive. There's so many different ways that people can help, and we're really grateful to you for having us here today and to all the listeners and all the people across the Delaware Valley who are helping us drive hunger from our communities.
Yes. All right. You heard it here at Philly Cam on People Power Lunch Hour. If this is an issue that you care about, you want to be part of the solution, you want to get actively involved in helping people access food, all types of people, check out Philabundance and also Hunger Free America. They're two really great organizations that are actively involved in this fight. If you're working on other issues such as access to healthcare and other affordable housing issues, these issues are all connected. So thank you for listening and watching here at Philly Cam. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. You can watch this episode and all of our episodes of the People Power Lunch Hour at phillycam.org. Thanks for watching and listening.
You can eat, but it should be in moderation. If you have kids, you need to change your lifestyle for your kids. Even if you don't do it for yourself, who else is dependent on you?
Because everybody has a different understanding of what good food. Some people, good food is healthy food. And for me today, that's what good food is for me, healthy food. Because a lot of us, we go on how food tastes.
Oh, I'm embracing the fact that healthy food is what I need. I get it straight from a mother who's 100 years old as we speak. She taught me everything she knows. So I continue to do that with myself. Hopefully I can, as we say, encourage somebody else to do the same for themselves.
You know, but my religion teaches us that our body is a temple. And you gotta respect your body enough to know what it is that you're putting into your body. Read those nutritional labels on the package. That's telling you everything that's right in there. Telling you everything you need to know.
Like a lot of people say, I don't drink sodas. But you have these liters in your house for your kids to drink, so you might want to pull back on that. People say, I don't drink water. Find a way to make water a part of your life. You know, you need water. So if you have to put fruits and vegetables in your water to make it taste good, do that. Take water with you, substitute, sodas for water. Substitute sodas for tea. Try to do a little bit of healthy every now and then, but still have fun with your food. Make your food so colorful that you enjoy looking at it and eating it.
I eat food hoping to get some benefit out of the food. I understand that it's important. What I put into my body, that's what I'm going to get out of my body. Understanding that we have to eat stuff for the nutritional value in it, not just for how it tastes.
I can't cook for the world, but believe me, I can do it for me. And if I can do it for me, there's hope that you can do it for yourself. The recipe is simple. Start at A, end at eat.